Hello everyone. So it's a new day and I have so much that I want to share. I almost got stuck thinking about where should I start, where should I begin. So then I had to take some deep breaths and take it into small pieces, which is always good and always smart. And so I have a hot topic for you today, a big hot topic. But before we get into there, I will share with you my finalized project, which is going to be flying for Bulgaria. And I'm so excited about it because it is complete. Here she is, my little doll. She's going to grandma, and here's her little chicken. And I'll show you the completed chicken. It actually turned out pretty cute. It's going to be inside this basket. And so here it is. My chicken is complete. I made her little wings stick out a little bit, so she's kind of ready to, well, they don't fly, but I don't even know what you would say it in English, perch or flutter or something like that. And then here is the doll. I did stuff her with tea. I added mint and I added lavender and carnation. So she's infused with healing herbs. And she has little hair curls that just kind of cover her, and she has a lot of lace underneath. And I was just having so much fun creating her, and starting from scratch to the last touch was just lovable. So I'm excited. Okay, she goes now into her box, and later I will have to find time to ship her. Okay, I also made myself some matcha green tea because I love other cultures. As much as I talk about Bulgaria and I love my culture, I also appreciate learning about other cultures and tasting and smelling and sipping on their traditional foods and drinks, and yeah, I just appreciate it. So this is delicious. That just came to me as in a moment of a muse, and so I've been using it all day long. So I also put on my crochet dress, which I made up a few years ago, 1 or 2 years ago. I saw a picture of a Bulgarian traditional folk dress called nosia that was typical for my native region of Varna on the Black Sea, because I was curious. I typically see other regions presented from my country, and I was curious to see what do my people from my region wear traditionally. And because I immigrated a long time ago, I didn't have the time, the chance to be introduced as much as I have developed this passion and love later in life living in a foreign country. So I saw this picture from a Bulgarian nosia from the region of Varna, and I made up my own. But because I didn't have the materials to sew, because traditionally they would be sewn from cottons and woolen materials, I actually just used what I had and I was crocheting. So I was so excited to wear it, especially when it's been chilly and cold outside. And yeah, my little experiments kind of ran wild, and it's really exciting to wear it, even though it's not something that my ancestors would have worn, because it simply wasn't popular to crochet their apron dresses, but it's still the same style, the same color, the same decorations. So it's in the same spirit. So that's what I get, at least by living in a foreign country, trying to preserve my traditions and authentic clothes and culture. So I need to take a pause because I have a hot topic for y'all. It's one of those difficult topics that again, I didn't grow up with. I was not taught this in school. And I have heard from many people from other countries that they have never heard of this. They don't know what that's about. So let me know in comment areas. feel free to, share if you have heard of what I will cover today. I've taken proper notes because I want it to be exact and precise, and because I do work a full-time job, I don't have time to be memorizing absolutely everything, and it's like there's so many thoughts and so many ideas. I have to structure them so I can present them in a neat way that you guys can fathom. And then I'll add, as in the past, look into my comments area. I am adding the sources where I'm finding what I share with you. A lot of times those are in Bulgarian language. Unfortunately, they are not translated. So hence my desire to be translating and popularizing those to the English-speaking world. So, have you guys heard of Han Tervel? I want to talk about him because he's a great guy, man, and everybody, especially in the history of Europe, if you have European descendants, if you come from Europe, everybody should know. You should know about him. So who is the liberator or the savior of Europe? That's him. And his full name is Trivelius-Theoctistus. We call him Tervel. And you will see his names again in the comments area if you look down after this video. So in the exposition, proclamation to the gospel, in the courtyard of the spiritual and educational center named Saint Archangel Michael in Varna, Bulgaria, again Varna, that city on the Black Sea, my native city, there are depicted the faces of Bulgarian saints and important personalities from the first and second Bulgarian kingdoms, with whom we associate the establishment of Christianity in our lands. I will cover the Bulgarian kingdoms in the future, so look for that. The first of them is indeed Saint Tervel. Maybe in English you would say Tervel, I don't know, but the proper name to spell his name, to pronounce his name is Tervel, T-E-R-V-E-L. Or as his full name goes, and I mentioned, it's Saint, Han, and King Trivelius-Theoctistus, also called the Saint Pious King of Bulgaria. The website that I'm sharing underneath comes from archange.bg, and you can see that later. So it informs us that the year of 2018 marked the 1300, so 1,300 years anniversary of the battle in which the Caesar King Tervel saved Constantinople and the Eastern Roman Empire in Europe. The merits of this Bulgarian ruler extend beyond the borders of our country, as he stopped the Arab invasion of the old continent of Europe and was declared the savior of Europe. He was given the highest Christian title for a head of state, which at the time was a Caesar. According to the words of Pious of Hilendar, and I will cover him in the future because he is just another great Bulgarian enlightener of whom we shall speak definitely in the future. So in his Slavic Bulgarian history, Saint Pious of Hilendar says that Tervel was not only a Christian, but also the first Bulgarian saint. So, Saint Trivelius-Theoctistus also carries the name of Bogus Sozidatelен. I tried to translate this in English. I honestly struggled so much. We have a complex system of combining words to mean one complex and deep and wise meaning. I really don't know what else to say except that it's the closest translation I was thinking of was Tervel, God confirming. Bogus Sozidatelen is like to form, to create, to confirm, and Bogo comes from God, but clearly enough he didn't create our creator created him. So the proper way to translate that would be Tervel, the God confirming, because indeed with his way of life he confirmed the truth of God as we understand him in the Orthodox Christian tradition. So he was the Bulgarian ruler, Han Tervel of the Dulo family, son of Han Asparuch and grandson of Han Kubrat. Lots of terminology for English speakers, for foreigners, so let's review. What does a Han mean? You guys will spell it as a Khan. We say Han. What is the Dulo family? Dulo. And who is Han Asparuch? Okay, well, Han traditionally is a title of a ruler originating from, they say, Central Asia, and it's been spread mostly among the Mongols and the Turks, or so Wikipedia tells us and popular historic resources. So sometimes it's translated as king. So typically, you probably have heard this used in the popular Genghis Khan. So he was the Mongol ruler, and his grandson Kublai Khan. That's typically what's discussed in our books. Well, for many years, the title Kanasu Bigi was used actually by the Bulgarian rulers. So stay tuned, because you will discover even more blowing my mind facts about Bulgarian history and facts that connect to our world history, that beg questions and reflection. So I'm gonna take a deep breath and continue with this because I get excited. So the title was used in places in the historiography of other rulers in the Bulgarian first country, or first state, as we would call it. Okay, we'll talk more about this in the future, because there are many different Bulgarias that we can discuss in the future. We had lots of kingdoms. Okay, Dulo family, that's just the name of a Bulgarian clan, and we will cover that again in the future, because there were so many Bulgarian kingdoms. There were different clans and different estates, in a way, kind of like different states spread throughout the world. Han Asparuch in particular, well, he is the Han, or the ruler, who reached the Danube River, and so he's the creator and the developer in that way of the Bulgaria as we currently know her. This country, or that was a kingdom at the time, that country that we have, was established by Han Asparuch, and he is from the Dulo family. So Han and Saint Tervel is a descendant of this family line. And so he ascended the throne and he ruled the first Bulgarian state, which in the Bulgarian language, we also, like I said, call it a country. So he ruled in the period of 700 to 721. I'll make a note. In episode 3, I mentioned, when I was talking about the Thracians, if you have watched that, I used the word countries, that the Thracians had many countries, at least 80 plus different tribes and countries that one ruler would rule over. Well, now that I think in retrospect, the proper translation could have been states. The ancient Thracians literally had one big people of 1,500,000. That was in that episode we discussed how they were second in population to India at the time, and they had many states and one ruler. So in this regard, Patriarch Nicephorus wrote in his short history that in the autumn of the same year, that's in 705, and I'll bring you back to that, Emperor Justinian went outside the gates of Constantinople, accompanied by a large detachment of troops and generals, and came to the camp of the Bulgarians to personally honor Tervel. In the state hierarchy of the Roman Empire, the title of Caesar was the highest given to medieval European rulers. So 705, this is the year when in Constantinople, Han Tervel received the title of Caesar of the Eastern Roman Empire and King of Bulgaria. The Caesar is actually a co-emperor. I'm leaving the rest of the thinking to you. Okay, so how do we know that Han Tervel was a Christian? How can we prove it? Is there evidence? What are we talking about? So, the title of a Caesar was only received by Christian rulers at the time, so Han Tervel had evidently converted to Christianity along with his family. Besides this fact, there is no other instance in history in the entire 12th century of the Eastern Roman Empire's history that a foreign ruler was proclaimed a Caesar. The popularity of Han Tervel among the chroniclers of Christian Europe is very great. So, already at the end of the 15th century, one of the most important representatives of Italian historiography, Marcantonio Sabellico, that same resource tells us, wrote about Han Tervel, quote, as it was said, the first Bulgarian king to baptize was Trivelius Tervel, end of quote. Side note, let's just talk a little bit of a side note here that I made for myself and wanted to share with you guys. So, what was Saint and Han Tervel's accomplishment? What exactly did he accomplish in his life? I can list 3 huge major accomplishments that need to be preserved in history and discussed and popularized and voiced out. Number 1, Han Tervel, Trivelius, saved Europe from the invasion of Arabs. Number 2, he, the same Han Tervel, saved Christianity from Muslim enforcement. Number 3, without his interference, there would be no Europe, and there would be no Christianity today. There would be neither new nor old world Europe. Now, I've heard of people who hate Christianity. I'm very familiar. I know people from different social strata and religious backgrounds and beliefs. Christianity has been butchered a lot over the centuries, and I will cover this in the future. So stay tuned. I can only tell you that everybody is accepted. I see God's innocent creature in you guys, and your free will is respectful to me. And let's just remain patient, because I will cover lots of those points. The way people have communicated to me how they have been taught about Christianity in the modern world and the Western world, and nowadays, 2023, it sounds deplorable to me. It wrenches my heart, and I have a lot to say about this, but that's going to be in the future. So for now, I'll just continue with Han Tervel. So European authors pay Tervel worthy attention. They call him a savior of Europe, because with the Bulgarian army, he stopped the Arab invasion of the old continent, understand Europe, and he saved the Eastern Roman Empire from Islamization. Historical and artistic works in Europe until the 17th century also recreate with appreciation the work of this Bulgarian Han, who was also canonized by the Christian Church as the Holy King Trivelius. Let's add a side note. The Christian Church, as we know it back then, had nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Church. Again, stay tuned for later. Like I said, these are hot topics. If you need to make yourself a calming, soothing tea, that's completely okay. Medieval chroniclers also wrote in detail about the greatest feat of King Tervel. Again, Han, king, Caesar, which led to his canonization as a Christian saint. So, he has been mentioned with appreciation as the savior of Europe. So, breathing, let's imagine for a little bit, and that's going to be a little difficult to do, and I'll invite you to do this for the sake of reality and facts, just kind of to place ourselves in that historical era at the time. What was this Islamic invasion like? Why do we mention Islamic invasion at that time? Yes, I make the difference. I'm not putting everybody under the same denominator. Every human being is different. But at that time, there was a struggle. There was a war going on. So this took place about barely a century since Islam had begun to be preached or popularized. And so the Muslim Arabs conquered all of Asia Minor. They invaded Persia and Armenia, causing genocide. We can talk about it in future, but Armenia is not Bulgaria. It doesn't concern us as much as Bulgaria, although it touches my heart deeply. And they conquered North Africa. In 711 AD, they moved to the European continent. The Moors conquered Spain. In 716, they captured Lisbon and headed east to France. At the same time, the Arabs invaded Thrace with a strong army and completely devastated the entire province. They then marched on to Constantinople, and entrenching themselves near the city walls, began a complete siege of the city from the land side. 3,000 ships entered the Bosphorus and besieged Constantinople from the seaside as well. The goal was for the two Islamic armies, on the one hand from the west, from Spain, on the other hand from the east, Constantinople, to simultaneously attack and conquer Europe. Smoosh it, make it disappear. The siege of the city lasted for 3 years. There was no food, there was no water in the fortress, because the Arabs at the time cut off the aqueduct. The aqueduct. The city was drowning in filth, there was disease raging, and people were desperate. Hunger was oppressing everybody, including the Arabs. So they ended up eating corpses of the dead. Those Muslim Arabs exterminated each other for food, and they also looked for small stones and ate them to satisfy their hunger. Thus tells us Michael the Syrian in his writings. What did Saint and Han Tervel look like? After this picture, maybe we can get a cool idea of what was his lifestyle, what was his outlook, what were his looks. According to historians, Han Tervel was small in nature, small in stature. He was peace-loving. In images that have been found so far, he has been represented as a Caesar and a king with Christian symbols. On his seal that was discovered in 1972 has been engraved the inscription, Mother of God, protect Caesar Tervel. In the 18th and 19th centuries, famous Bulgarian painters from the famous Samokov school depicted the face of this saint in many Bulgarian churches and monasteries in the Balkans. He's present on many of the walls' iconography, portrayed as the ruler clothed in monastic robes of a Theoctist. Examples of such holy places, churches and monasteries include the Bulgarian Zograf Monastery on Mount Athos, Rila Monastery in Bulgaria, the Troyan Monastery in Bulgaria, Preobrazhensky Monastery, the Church of Belova in Samokov, the Church of the Introduction of the Virgin in Panagyurishte, the Monastery of Saint Spas near the village of Lozen, the Church in Staro Selo, the Church in the village of Dren, and so forth and so forth. Look for comments again because I will include those for proper spelling. So what were his accomplishments? What did he do? In more detail, he understood very well that the danger looming from the east was very terrible. It was more terrible than the treachery of the Byzantine emperors at that time. Side note, I'll talk about Byzantine Empire. I don't think that many people know the details that also went ups and downs in relation to that. But that's for the future. Han Tervel also decided to help them against the attack of the Arabs, and so he went to battle with his entire army against the advancing Islam. In the early morning of August 15th, in the year of 718, a whirlwind of arrows rained down on the Arab troops, followed by the Bulgarian cavalry. Tervel attacked the Arabs suddenly in the rear, and while it was still dark, according to the spare words of Saint Theophan the Confessor, the Bulgarians killed 22,000 Arabs. The pogrom, in English devastation, was complete. The Arabs fled in panic. Some threw themselves in despair into the Bosphorus. Their ships raised their sails and they sailed away. In this way, the thrice great ruler, Tervel, of the Bulgarians, The saint and Caesar, Tsar and Han Tervel saved Constantinople and the entire Europe. A canonized saint, so the Christian world with deep appreciation has immortalized this holy king and ruler and his works. The Orthodox Church canonized him as a saint. I say Orthodox again because at that time there was no other church but the Orthodox Church. More on this again in future videos. Guys, stay tuned. It's a lot. You can imagine a little kid studying Bulgarian history. Myself, at least, my head used to spin with so many facts. Being first grader, second grader, third grader, it's so overwhelming with so much information. I can relate if you guys are feeling overwhelmed with so many facts. But that's what an old history does. A country with an old history will have so many facts. It's natural. So, just to fill you in on a few more facts here, contemporary writers say that Tsar Boris I legitimized Christianity as the official religion in Bulgaria, but it is clear that it came to be and was accepted by most prominent Bulgarians way much earlier. So during the time of Han Tervel, the Bulgarians were mostly Christians. It became clear from Jesuit books that Han Tervel was canonized by the Christian Church under the name of Saint King Trivelius, or Triveli, like we say. Evidence that he was Christian can also be found in the history of the caliphs written by an Armenian monk, as well as in the early 17th century book The Kingdom of the Slavs by the Croatian abbot from Dubrovnik, Mavro Orbini, which also goes by the title of Book of Historiography. So there are 3 Bulgarian sources that talk about the life and deeds of Han Tervel. One is the History of Slavonic Bulgaria by Saint Pious of Hilandar. The second resource is History by Hierom monk Spiridon. And the third resource is the so-called Pictorial Bulgarian History. The Bulgarian Saint Pious of Hilandar, of whom we shall talk again about in the future, like I mentioned, he called Han Tervel one of the greatest Bulgarians and the most worthy after Tsar Boris I, who was the baptizer of the Bulgarians. We'll cover in the future. Saint Pious of Hilandar also wrote that the Holy King Trevelia or Tervel and the Holy King Ivan or John Michael Boris I were holy in their lives and brave and strong in their royal prosperity. And no other kings were invincible in war and in difficult and trying times, and by God's will freed their Bulgarian people from great oppression and captivity of other nations and kingdoms. Here's something that fascinates me before we move to closure with this video. It fascinates me because Han Tervel, being the first Christian that we know of, Bulgarian Christian ruler, along with other rulers that I'll talk about in the future, practiced humility. And here's the example that he gave as a Christian. So he built a monastery near the city of Ohrid. That territory was Bulgarian territory, guys. He withdrew in it from secular life and he became a monk under the name of Theoctistus. In all 3 sources, the narratives are identical, but Spiridon Gabrovsky, they say his account is the most complete. And so during his time, the relics of Han Tervel were located in the same monastery that he built and he resided in. And why this fascinates me is because after so many accomplishments, after such a great rising political in power, he humbled himself by entering a monastery and dedicating his life to serving God. Point to me, show me any ruler who is that honest and that heart, how can I say, open in his heart and clear about his, purpose and serving. Any ruler who is that humble. Talk to me, share. Here's one more thing. On April 27th, 2011, the day on which 1700 years ago, the Edict of Emperor Galerius was issued to grant the right to freedom to profess Christianity, His Eminence Metropolitan Kirill of Varna and Great Preslav, together with his vicar, His Eminence Bishop Ioan of Glavinitsa, and clergymen from the city of Varna and the Shumen spiritual district, consecrated the newly built church in the village of Madara, Shumen spiritual district, erected in honor of the Holy Pious Bulgarian king Trivelius-Theoctistus, Han Tervel, and the Holy Martyr and Saint George the Victorious. So I'm going to give you a little bonus fact here. The Madara is definitely the most suitable place, a lot of Bulgarians believe, for the construction of the first Bulgarian temple in honor of Saint Tervel. The Madara is located in Bulgaria, and so it's representation of a rider, or we also call it the Madara rider or the Madara horseman. Madarsky konik in Bulgarian language. It's a rock, it's a large rock relief that basically represents a horseman facing right, who is thrusting a spear into a lion lying at his horse's feet. And so on the left is a dog that's running after the horseman, and so the carving of the horseman's halo and garments, and as there is a bird in front of the horseman's face. They're barely recognizable as time has faded, but they're huge, almost like in natural size, big. Actually, the sizes are 25 meters, which is 75 feet above the ground level, and an almost vertical, they say, 100 meter, which is 328 feet high cliff. In 1979, it was enlisted in the UNESCO World Heritage List. So they have depicted the Madara horseman as the best fitting location where the famous Madara horseman should be identified with our Han Tervel. So I would like to share with you, lastly, Metropolitan Kirill's words. He's Bulgarian. He's a Bulgarian metropolitan, one I'm referring to. So he said, Han Tervel is the first Bulgarian ruler, tonsured as a monk, and later canonized as a saint. Now is the time, with God's help, for more Bulgarians to become familiar with this part of Bulgarian history, so that we can be proud that Bulgarians have so many saints among their rulers. Let us thank God that this temple was also built, and let us rejoice with the victory, Christ's victory of life over death. The saint is honored by the Bulgarian Orthodox Church on September the 3rd, and they offer a little prayer in the Orthodox Christian tradition, as we say, Holy and faithful King, Caesar, and Han, Trivelius-Theoctistus, Han, King, and Saint Tervel, pray to Christ God for us. So this is, in a nutshell, the video that I wanted to share with you. Like I said, it's a lot of information, and I will follow up with a lot of other videos about what exactly the Orthodox Christian Church's role in Bulgaria has been, and how she has been treated, what we have endured, my people have endured. I will also share with you about the ancient Thracians a lot more in depth, because again, much has been kept in silence for strange, interesting reasons we can only guess about. But for right now, I will let you ponder what you just learned from me today. Thank you for joining me at Sedyanka. If you're interested in my channel and you would love to hear more of this content, please subscribe to my videos and support me in that way. It's a pleasure for me to share facts such as these, to research and put them in the comment area for you and make short videos. If you're not interested, clearly don't join. Clearly let it be. And I respect you just as well as much. So I hope that the rest of the week goes well for you, and we will see each other via video in that way soon. Bye bye.